All right, I see everybody is getting in. Joe, Eben, Anderson, Adam, Carlos, Jürgen, Todd. This is where you'll post any questions in the chat box. If I put some breaks in the deck so that we can just stop and cycle through there and answer questions. You can always post to the Facebook group, but I'm not actually monitoring that during this presentation. I think we'll start in about a minute. Where is everybody? Is anybody in New York City? Hong Kong? San Diego? Nice, Italy. Netherlands. Madrid, Orange County, the OC. Michigan, Dublin. Spencer's in Tucson. Nice. Wow, Netherlands, Phoenix. Isn't this awesome, Sarah? Talking to my wife. My wife is right there. 31 people here. You're what? No, it's all right. They would have to pay more. Yeah. My wife says she's not getting on the screen because she didn't take a shower. And with that, I think we'll kick off. Yeah, if you come late to this, for future reference, we're recording these and we're going to put them in the members area. So don't worry about that. I am going to share my screen. And let's see, share screen here. My desktop. Actually, give me 1 second. I want to share my screen, and yet I want to keep the chat window sort of popped out so I can see it. Sharing screen. Let me all know if you can see my screen. You should see a jumble of stuff. There we go. Ahmed says yes. I'm going to assume everybody can see the screen now. I don't know if you should still, you probably won't see my face. Actually, maybe you do see my face. Who knows if you still see my face. You see my screen. That's all that's important. All right, welcome. This is the first of 8 classes for the e-commerce growth masterclass given through Conversion XL. If this is not what you signed up for, you're in the wrong place. But my name is Drew Sanaki, and I'll tell you a little bit more about who I am later in the deck and why I'm giving this class. I want to cover 4 things today. We've got about an hour and a half. Ideally, the way we'll structure these is about an hour for lessons, and then I leave 30 minutes for QA. But today I want to cover 4 things. Basically, number 1, the private equity approach to growing an e-commerce business. That's my background, and so it's one I want to kind of share with you because I hope it will help you grow your e-commerce businesses. Number 2, give an overview of the course. Number 3, some marketing principles that I think we're going to draw on throughout the 8 lessons. And then I'm going to start getting into our first topic, which is retention. And this is retention week here at Conversion XL. We're going to do the second part of retention on Thursday. Before I get into this, I would love volunteers. Anybody who is open to sharing their Google Analytics with the group. Add clients at empiregrowthgroup.com to your Google Analytics, to your email service provider, whatever you have. Ideally, if you have over 6 figures in revenue and have customers, because I want to go in and show you all some customer data if I can, and some reporting in Google Analytics. The only way I can do that is if you guys buy in and authorize me to do that. I have some other companies I work with, but I don't have their permission to kind of share them with you. I might do it. I might do it anyway. Hopefully I won't. So this is, not for today's lesson, but in the future. just add me and drop me a note in the Facebook group. Let me know if it's okay to show your GA. So first thing I want to talk about today is the private equity approach to growing a business. And that's a little bit of my background. My background most recently was I was the CMO, the chief marketing officer of a private equity-backed company called Karmaloop. It was about a $100 million streetwear apparel retailer. And I came on board there in the summer of 2015. And this company had tried really a million different ways to grow. So they at one point had venture funding. They were trying everything: AdWords, social, blog outreach, like basically any tactic you could imagine they were trying. And still, this is what their Google Analytics looked like. It was kind of a slow down into the right, which you don't want to see, from $100 million in revenue up here all the way to bankruptcy in 2015 here on the right-hand side. And that downward trajectory continued until we made one big shift that really changed the business. And that was going from an acquisition emphasis to a retention emphasis. And you can see here within 3 months, all the metrics were getting better. Revenue up almost 30%, conversion rate up, transactions, AOV, all up and to the right. And 10 months later, we were able to sell the business for about $10 million more than we bought it. So it was kind of the ultimate house flip. You buy something, you fix it up, and then in about a year later, you sell it. And my takeaways from that are that most businesses really eke by when they could be growing a lot faster. It's possible to double your business without twice the work. And the most powerful way to do this is to deconstruct your revenue model and target your big wins. And this is really like the private equity approach. Before I get into that, I want to share with you a little bit about my background. My name is Drew Sanaki. I live in New York City. It's a picture of me. And I'm telling you this because context matters. It kind of matters who you're getting advice from. Like, is the person you're getting advice from single, living on some beach in Bali and has all the time in the world? Or is he like me? I'm married, I've got 2 kids. And I think that informs my advice to you. You're sort of, you know where it's coming from. That, like, I try to maximize the time I get out of my business. I try to maximize the results I get out of my business. And it's because I've got a family and I don't want to spend all my day and all my nights and all my weekends working on the business. So that's who I am. That's a little bit more about where I'm from. I should say I also blog about e-commerce at nerdmarketing.com. So I refer to that blog a lot. It is not my primary business, but from time to time I put up some content there. And there are really 2 reasons you should listen to me when it comes to e-commerce. The first is that I got started early. I built my own e-commerce retailer in 2003. It's called designpublic.com. I had just graduated from an MBA program at Stanford, and I was soon to find that MBA program was pretty worthless when it came to building an e-commerce retailer. There's nothing I learned in my MBA program that helped me. Not that it was a colossal waste of money, but I think I was there running my retailer in 2003. And where did I go for information about marketing? I went online. I started looking at catalog marketing. And catalog marketing and their approach to how to market a business dated back to the 1960s, really, when catalog marketing got going in the United States. And almost all the principles and rules in catalog marketing apply to e-commerce. So it was from catalog marketing that I learned, the power of direct response and transactional data analysis, where you take all the transactions from your business and you can segment and target there. I learned about RFM, which is a key way to do segmentation and targeting based on 3 factors: recency, frequency, and monetary value. We're going to get into that. I also learned about the power of 80-20, that in any e-commerce retailer, typically 20% of your customers drive 80% of the revenue, or 20% of your products drive 80% of the revenue. And that fit in well with sort of who I am and the fact that I've got a family and a life outside of e-commerce, and I don't want to spend all my time on my business. So in reading through catalog marketing and database marketing, I developed this framework for growing Design Public. And using this framework, this growth framework, which I also call the private equity framework, from 0 to $1 million, sold that business in 2011. And if you go to nerdmarketing.com/8, there's a story about how I did that. And then I sold it to a private equity fund, and then joined a private equity fund as what's called an operating partner. And first, what private equity is, most of you are probably familiar with venture capital. These are funds that invest in ideas, usually in very small companies. So they give them seed capital to get started. Whereas a private equity fund invests in or buys a bigger company that might be in business for several years, like Karmaloop. And they go in, they see an opportunity, maybe the business is not tapping a certain opportunity. They will go in, they will often put new management in place and try to grow that company. So it's very different from venture capitalists who have to be good at identifying new ideas. Private equity companies have to go in and sort of optimize the ship, optimize what's already there. It fit my skill set really well. And as an operating partner, I became the operational bench for a fund called Comvest. And they do a lot of direct-to-consumer work. And as their operational talent, if they're looking at a deal, they may hire me to do diligence on the deal. So tell them what the opportunity is. They may then hire me to run the company once the deal goes through, as was the case in Karmaloop and a couple of the other ones here. Drew, now we bought this asset, can you run it and help grow it? So that's what I do full-time now. And I use this framework, the catalog marketing growth framework that I developed at Design Public, I use with a lot of the portfolio companies at Comvest. So Old Time Pottery, we used it there to net about $4 million in additional profits in under 3 months. Really, really good success there. Fanprint, I'm on the board of this company, Fanprint. They went from 0 to 10 million in a year using a lot of the principles in this framework. And in Karmaloop, I think I mentioned, they were losing about $500,000 a month, and we brought them to profitable in under 10 months using this framework, at which point we sold off that business. So to me, it works, and it's really powerful, and it's simple math. So there are really only 3 multipliers that allow you to grow your e-commerce business. They are, number 1, purchase frequency, or it's a retention metric. It's basically the number of times a customer buys from you on average. Number 2, average order value, or AOV, so the average size of an order. And number 3, the total number of customers you have. So these are really the only 3 ways you have to grow your business, to grow revenue in your business. They come from, I think Jay Abraham is sort of this phenomenal old marketer who came up with this framework. But it applies really well to my private equity work. And I think it simplifies things because we get caught in tactical maneuver hell where we look at all these tactical opportunities and get stressed out about optimizing this entire thing when it really only boils down to these 3 multipliers. And the power of these 3 is that improving any one of them is good, but if you can improve all 3, the results multiply. For example, in a year, do you think you can increase your retention by 30%, retention or your F for frequency? Can you increase your average order size by 30%? And can you increase your total number of customers by 30%? Any one of these in isolation, I think, is really doable, right? The trouble people get in is when they try to find the silver bullet that will, say, double your total number of customers by double in a year. It's really hard, but if you look at only moving each of these 30%, you're going to more than double the business, right? So take this hypothetical company, got about 1,200 customers, an AOV of about $150, and each customer orders 1.3 times. That gives you a total revenue of just about $250,000. And if you increase each by 30%, you've more than doubled the business. And the math of this is, 1.3 times 1.3 times 1.3 is 220%. It's just some some very quick backhand math that I think we should all work through right now as a foundation before we get into the class. So on this slide, which is included in the slide deck, I put into the Facebook chat. You should be able to click on this link, and we're going to work through something right now. I'll put the link in chat. So I'll copy this. I'm seeing, is the audio choppy? Is the audio still choppy? Good thing I'm seeing the chat window now. Okay, good. I go through like an hour and a half, and then I find out that the audio didn't work. So I just put a link in chat, and we can do it now. I'll work through it right now, but if you don't get the gist of this, you can work on it throughout the week. But I think it's important for each of us to find our number one, F, our AOV, number two, and then number three, our total number of customers. Because it'll give us a baseline that we can work towards. So I see everybody's getting into this doc. You just go to File, and you're watching my screen now. File, make a copy for yourself, because I think I have this as read-only permissions. And the way I built this spreadsheet is right here. I take a little, the GA slug. If you want to make this easy for yourself, we'll go into a Google Analytics account, and this person was kind enough to share theirs with me. The GA slug is just this up here in the URL. So it's a unique link, unique to your business, right? So if you just take that and you plug it in here, you're going to get your own. Basically, these three links here that you will use will change dynamically. Quarter start and end. I like to look back at a quarter, a full quarter. So Q4 last year would be from October through December. That's what these numbers are for. And again, these are dynamically creating these links down here, which you can then click on, like I will show you here. And they should bring you this Google Analytics report. Boom, right? So why do I look at only a quarter? Ideally, you would look back a year, 2 years. Google Analytics doesn't allow for that. It doesn't allow for adding segments, which is what I'm doing here, and looking back for more than 90 days. So a quarter is going to have to suffice. But let's go down to this part of the table. And here you're going to see what I've highlighted in yellow is what you should input. So for this particular retailer, the number of purchasers, what that is how many people, how many individuals actually purchased. And actually, let me go to full screen. Oh, if you're having trouble with this, pop up in the chat. So I'll keep the chat window here. I will move Pep's face off the screen. I assume you can still see this Google Analytics for this company. What I've done is add on a segment here called Made a Purchase. This is anyone who has made a purchase. And the way I define that segment is they've had transactions greater than 1. If you don't know how to create a segment in Google Analytics, I can, why don't I do a little video on that later? We can move chat, okay, good. But basically what you want to do is choose a segment for this list, and you set it to made a transaction, yes, or made more than one transaction. And that gives me 2 segments here. I've got the all users segment in green, which is everybody on my site, whether they purchased or not. Then I've got made a purchase, means the blue represents sessions of people who bought. You can see when I add that segment, then I can pull some information, some interesting information out of Google Analytics. So we go to add a made a purchase segment, then audience overview users for made a purchase, or again, you just click on that link. In the left-hand side, audience overview and then users made a purchase. This is telling me that during this period of time, which again was October 1st to December 31st, I have 1,252 people made a purchase. Those are individual people who made a purchase. I put that number in here, okay? That gives me my total number of purchasers, how many customers bought. AOV. AOV is the average order size. To get my average order size, that's a little easier. I go in under conversions, e-commerce, overview, and it's going to bring up my AOV right here. So $154.24. I enter that in here. And then the total number of transactions, again, on e-commerce overview transactions. So that's this number. That is 1686. So why do the total number of transactions not equal the total number of purchasers? In case that's not obvious, because you have some people coming back to buy again, right? And that's what is our frequency, which is a calculated metric. So you don't have to fill this one in. Our frequency for this retailer is 1.35. And then that gives you a revenue, which is just number of purchasers times the average order size times the frequency of purchase, gives you about $250,000, right? So do this for yourself. Just do this first part. And the 30% increase is obviously, we take this number and multiply it by 1.3, and you're going to see how this is your goal. I think this should be for all the retailers on this call. This should be your goal by the end of 2017. Like, how do you double your business? And it's a very quick and easy way to do it. I hope that was clear. If it's not, we can go over it, but I don't want to spend too much time on it now because we're already 20 minutes in. So our job as marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs is to focus on what moves the needle the most, right? And the goal I have in this course is to give you that private equity game plan. So the big concern of these private equity funds is that they want an ROI on their investment. They want to convince their investors that they should buy a business like Karmaloop and then get a return on it in like 100 days. They always go in with that. It's amazingly short-sighted. Unlike the venture capitalist who says, I want to buy the billion-dollar business or the business that could be $1 billion in like 10 years, the PE funds want ROI, and they want it usually now. Like, if we can go in and change some things, some simple things that get us a return on that initial investment within 100 days, so a little over 3 months, then all the investors are happy. And in many ways, it sort of like validates the investment thesis. So that's the PE approach. Does anybody have questions on that? It's really in the way I handle a diligence project, or the way I handle something like Karmaloop, is I take those 3 multipliers. I disregard everything else. I take those 3 multipliers and I say, how do I get each of these to increase over 30% in the next 100 days? If I hit it, great. If I miss it by a little bit, I'm still doing really well. And the net result is the fund's happy. We make a lot of money. And I think it's just a great perspective for you to have. So does anybody have any questions before I go on to the next part? I'm looking at the chat window. Yeah, Ahmed asks, what about costs? So I was very specific to say those are 3 multipliers that build revenue, right? So I didn't say profits, right? But oftentimes, at least the first 2, if you can increase the first 2, there are very little costs involved. It's a good question. So we go back to the 3 multipliers here, right there, or boom. Most businesses focus only on number 3. And I would say that 99% of the blogs out there and writing are all about number 3. It's about what? Traffic and conversion. Traffic. Like, how do you get more traffic? What's the number 1 problem with that? The number 1 problem with traffic is it's expensive, right? Like, it costs money for Facebook ads. It costs money for AdWords. It costs money to hire a writer to write content. So I find that if you are after profits, multiplier 1, retention, and multiplier 2, AOV, are where you want to start, right? Because for the most part, there are costs involved in improving those, but they're one-time costs for the most part. Whereas number 3 might be the easiest thing to increase, but you pay for it, right? So if you look at like, how are we going to increase each of these 30%? Most people go immediately after number 3. They go after increasing the total number of customers. And again, it's easier because you just spend for it, but you're not that profitable if you do it. So good observation. I am talking about increasing revenue here, but I find that in most cases, if you focus on number 1 and number 2 first, which I think you should for any business that's already existing as opposed to a startup, then you'll also improve profits here too. It's a key distinction. And okay, Spencer would love to see how to make those segments. I didn't want to get hung up on making segments on this lesson, but why don't I do a video and just post it to the Facebook group this week? So let's go over the course. And this is kind of related to the question Ahmed asked, but I divide the course up into those 3 multiplier buckets, right? So this week is retention week. It's retention week here in New York City. Everybody's excited about retaining our visitors. And I've got the overview today. And then on Thursday, I'm going to give you some specific campaigns that will help increase your user retention, your customer retention. Next week, it's AOV week here in New York City. We're going to spend 2 sessions on how to increase your AOV. The one I think you've all been waiting for is lesson 4 there, cross-selling and upselling. Great opportunity. And then we're going to move into acquisition, which is probably what most people, again, care about, because if you're starting, you should probably just focus on acquisition. But for those of you who already have a business that's more than, say, 6 months old, the other 2 factors come into play. But the last 1, 2, 3, 4 lessons will all be about acquisition. First, converting more visitors to paying customers, and then number 2, some acquisition funnels. And I should add that this is, the challenge I had before me is that you guys are all at different stages. Some people are starting, and some people are running very big retailers. And the challenge is, how do you develop an advanced e-commerce course for every, for those challenges, for those start, more traction. It's more that last, these last few lessons. Whereas for those of you who have a big retailer that's been in business for like 5 years, maybe the opportunity for you is on multiplier 1 or multiplier 2. So I would say, to the extent possible, if you have anything else you'd like me to touch on, please post it. Post it to the Facebook group. I can try to get through the lessons faster and address some of your concerns and make this curriculum a little bit more dynamic. So again, probably not, if you post to talk about something today in this class, I won't be able to do it, but post in the Facebook group, and I should be able to integrate it into future lessons. How to approach this course. I would like you to get out of tactical maneuver hell. I spent a fair amount of time there myself. These are, just some quick headlines that I was able to dig up, but most of you, if you're like me, get paralyzed by this kind of thing. You go to a conference like Traffic and Conversion in San Diego next week, or in 2 weeks, and you just get overwhelmed. You end up with like a notebook filled with tactics to take home to your own retailers. Or you read QuickSprout or Digital Marketer, all these great marketing blogs, and you're like, where the hell am I supposed to start growing my business? I'm just overwhelmed by all the tactics. And the goal is to abstract from this level and get to just those 3 multipliers, right? Every one of the tactics on this page fits into one of those multipliers. So my goal with the course is to give you a framework that will get you out of tactical maneuver hell. As a rule of thumb, it's best for you to focus on multipliers 1 and 2 first. So it's better to optimize your existing offer, your price, your upsells, your retention, before focusing on new traffic. And why is that? It's because traffic's more expensive, right? You want to maximize what you have and then multiply the traffic. So most retailers think that they need more traffic. What they actually need is more revenue. And there are often cheaper ways to get that as opposed to going and buying for Facebook traffic. I give you that 100-day plan perspective. And for the next 100 days, really, we want to work within our existing business and budget. We don't want to throw out any techniques or tactics that would require to go develop like a new skill set or hire new people, right? So within a day, and trying to think about how to grow that. Another thing that's helpful for me to think about is that process. So I think as marketers, we think a lot that we want there's a silver bullet, right? And certainly as humans, I think we're attracted to articles that promise us a silver bullet. But I would say that there's rarely a silver bullet that will like 20x your business this year, especially in e-commerce. E-commerce is not like SaaS or software or community sites that sometimes can blow up overnight, right? That can go viral. It's very rare that happens in e-commerce. And my mentor, this guy, John Brzee, who ran backcountry.com, took me aside because I was always looking for that silver bullet. And he said, Drew, what wins in e-commerce is pressure over time. And it was very helpful for me to just have that, to remind myself that growth is a process. This guy, Brian Balfour, who's a great growth hacker, he sort of helped grow HubSpot in the early days. He talks about growth as a process that, again, it may sell books and it may sell articles, but there's rarely a silver bullet that's going to 10x your traffic or 10x your business. Instead, we should focus on what's the weekly routine. How do we process all these ideas and implement them? And I want to give you this growth process over the next 4 weeks. This one's been helpful for me. I essentially create what's called a marketing backlog. And I put all my marketing ideas in the spreadsheet. I rank them by expected impact, number one, and expected effort required. And then I give them a score. And so the ideal idea for me to execute on would have, number one, high expected impact, and number two, be very easy to implement. So that's like the easiest. The hardest would be low expected impact, and then it would take me months to implement. So you rank all your ideas by those two factors, you score them. Ideally, you work back of the funnel to the front. So you work on retention ideas before you work on acquisition ideas. And that spreadsheet is all available here for you to take and start implementing at your own retailer. So Jürgen just asked for that. I'm 2 steps ahead of Jürgen. Boom. Here is the marketing backlog. Make a copy of it. And I put some ideas that are included in the course there already. It's something that's helped me. It may or may not help you, but the more you can think of a process here instead of looking for the silver bullet. A process would be, hey, all my ideas, I go to a conference, I listen to Drew's course, I read a good article, the ideas go into this backlog, and then once a week, once every other week, you review this thing, you rank them, and then you just pick off the top and you say, okay, this week is the week we're going to do number 1. Next week, we're going to do number 2. So this idea was popularized by this guy, Sean Ellis, who is again, famous growth hacker. He helped grow Dropbox in the early days. He does growthhackers.com. Nemo Chu used it at Kissmetrics. A lot of guys and women use this framework. I find it very helpful for e-commerce. So I would encourage you to have your own growth process framework. And this is one that works for me. Blake asks, do I have any recommendations for Asana? I think you can take these and put them right into any sort of project management solution. Let's go back to full screen. How can we review these ideas? So what this essentially is, Marco, is if you're familiar with Scrum or Agile, it's an approach taken from software development where you do these weekly sprints or these monthly sprints. And the idea is you're only going to focus on one thing for the week. And what we're going to focus on is this number one technique, in this case, launch an email cross-sell campaign. So that's what we're going to focus on. We're not going to be distracted by everything else on this list. If any new ideas come up during the week, we're going to put them on here and we're just going to deal with them later. But for our one sprint, we're going to be building our email cross-sell campaign. And then next week, we're going to come back to this list. Hopefully it will be done and we're going to choose something else to focus on. That's the general idea when I mean review your marketing backlog. How do you download these sheets? You go File and Make a Copy. File, Make a Copy, and then it's yours to keep. Cool. Let's go back into the presentation. So that's kind of the approach I would like you to have, or one that's worked for me. Keep in mind those words of John Brzee that what wins in e-commerce is pressure over time, that there are no silver bullets. I know it won't help sell this course, but I don't think there are. And the people who win are the people who can chip away at their marketing backlogs over time and build just really successful cash flow businesses. So let's move into the third section of this presentation. I have it's 40 after the hour here. And so that gives us about 20 more minutes of material, and then we can go into content. We can go into Q&A, but I think we're on track given what I want to cover. These are 4 principles that I took from catalog marketing and database marketing that I will refer to throughout the course. And I think they are sort of the digital marketing mindset you should adopt. The first principle is that behavior is more important than demographics. And this comes from sort of working as an advisor to a couple different e-commerce businesses. And one thing I find is that in our first meeting, it typically goes like this. I'll say, who's your customer? And they will say, well, she is, she's single, she's 35 to 40 years old, and she, lives in a rural area or something like that. And that what essentially that company is giving me is a demographic profile of who they think their customer is. And those things are not useless, but much more helpful in usable and actionable online, is a behavioral customer profile. So who's your best customer? Oh, they hang out on apartmenttherapy.com and they, like this kind of content. When they click through to this kind of content, they typically buy within 30 days from my site. So notice it's not a demographic profile I just gave you, it's a behavioral one. And it's more helpful to us online because it's hard to get at demographics, right? When we're looking at Google Analytics, we're looking essentially at behavioral data. And the example here that you often read about is the grandmother who rides a Harley. Like she defies every demographic profile of who Harley's best customers are, but her behavior is that of a passionate Harley rider. So the more you think about behavior, the better. The second is that behavior predicts the future. So there are 2 key factors in digital marketing that you should think about. One is recency. So the customer who was on our site or who bought from our site last week is much more recent than the customer who last bought from us 2 or 3 years ago. And who is going to be a better customer in the future? It's the customer who was on our site last week. So the more recent the customer or the visitor or the interaction, the more probable that that customer will be a customer in the future. That's recency, or R. The second is frequency. And what frequency means is the customer that bought from us 10 times in the past is probably going to be a better customer for us in the future than the customer who bought from us once. So recency and frequency, R and F, are super predictive of the future. The reason I have a wedding photo here is like, who are you most likely to marry? It's been shown that you are most likely to marry the person with high RF. So if you have a lot of repeated engagements with one person and you're seeing them recently, you're more likely to date them or marry them, right? Versus say like, someone popping up from junior high school and your old flame, right? Like it's probably going to be someone you have more repeated recent engagements with. So our first principle, behavior is more important than demographics. Think in terms of behavior. The second one starts to make this actionable for us as marketers. Behavior predicts the future. If we can identify our high RF customer segments, then hey, we found the gold mine. These people are going to be good customers in the future. The third is that communication changes behavior. So again, catalog marketing, these guys knew this, that sending out catalogs or direct mail is going to change user behavior. Today, that takes the form of email marketing, of retargeting, of ads, but we can indeed influence behavior by marketing to people. Pretty obvious, but important to review. And then the fourth principle is that in this class, in private equity, and in the world of running a business, I think we should be after ROI. I would guess that none of us are running, venture-backed companies that their goal is not ROI. Their goal is like just traffic or scale or something like that. This picture is of Warren Buffett. I want us all to think of as marketers, we should be Warren Buffett. We should be trying to figure out what's the best use of our next marginal dollar, right? For the most part, everybody in this group is a solo entrepreneur or runs a small team, or a founder of their business. This money is coming out of your pocket, right? So the question you should always be asking is, I have a marginal dollar to spend on marketing. Where am I going to spend it? Am I going to spend it on this ad, or am I going to spend it on this email campaign, or what? And the way you answer that is you put your Warren Buffett hat on and you say, which is going to give me the highest ROI? This is a quick quiz here, and I'll go to load up the chat window. But what do all these companies have in common? Gilt, One Kings Lane, Warby, Bonobos, Fab, Casper, Nasty Gal, I could go on. What do they have in common? Number one, they're often cited as examples of what we want to be when we grow up, right? But yeah, Autumn has the right idea. Number two, I don't think any of them ever made a profit, okay? So it's sort of this weird thing going on in e-commerce where we put these guys up on a pedestal and we say, we want to be them when we grow up. Yeah, we want to be direct to consumer, just like Bonobos or just like Warby. But at the end of the day, these guys are taking venture money and venture capital money, and they are plowing it into customer acquisition, and they are not turning a profit. So I would say, unless you are in that situation where you're sitting on a heap of someone else's capital, that you don't want that. Yeah, Ahmed is right. They're not profitable, right? So what you want to do is be Warren Buffett instead. You want to change your business into a cash flow machine. And you want to return a much better investment to yourself than you could find like in the stock market. So that's the perspective I have when I'm running this class, right? This class isn't about driving user acquisition unprofitably. It's going to be about creating profits for you. The holy grail, I have found, if you put these four principles together, is something called lifecycle marketing. This is a picture of the customer lifecycle. Most retailers have customers who have a life cycle. What it means is that it shows time on the x-axis and engagement or purchase activity on the y-axis. Way out here to the left, you've acquired a new customer. They're buying from you. They're buying from you more and more. Eventually up here, they are probably your VIP because they're buying for you so much. And then their purchase activity kind of tapers off because they've had all their needs met, or they've found a competing product or something like that. So new customers, existing customers, lapsed customers. This life cycle can vary in length by the retailer. So BMW or Maytag washing machines has a very long customer life cycle that extends over years, and maybe like the New York Times has very short customer life cycles based largely around stories or something like that. Not every customer follows the life cycle, but if you aggregate all your customer information, you usually can plot it out into something that looks like this curve. I like to talk about my personal example with Bonobos. Bonobos is a men's clothing brand. I think I'm wearing it now. When I first discovered them, I thought I found apparel nirvana. Like, they fit me. Bonobos is kind of known for how their fit works for men, especially in the pants. So I started buying more and more Bonobos until I'm up here and I'm one of their VIPs. And it's like every outfit I buy is from Bonobos. And my wife starts to call BS up here, and eventually my entire closet's filled with Bonobos, and then my Bonobos purchase activity starts to taper off. Well, the customer life cycle dictates how you should market to your customers. So, we hear a lot about segmentation and targeting. Well, what do you mean by segmentation and targeting? And one of the best ways to do segmentation and targeting is to segment by behavior. It's to look at the phase in the customer life cycle and deliver the right offer to the right customer at the right time. So when Drew is just discovering Bonobos over here, I've found this new brand. I've got my credit card out. I love it. What I need to see is more things to buy. So it's the marketing messages there should be more about, hey, have you considered this, or try this out, or I want to upsell you on this. Eventually I'm right here and I'm an MVP, and the marketing messages there should be more about loyalty and getting my feedback and trying to, again, give me even more things to buy. And all the way out here at the right, I'm kind of burned out on Bonobos. I've got my closet filled already. This is an opportunity to get a little bit more promotional. Hey, we haven't seen you in a while, Drew, come back. Here's 10% off. So the more you line your marketing up with the customer life cycle, you're just going to see this is a very profitable way to run your business. At my own retailer, I think we're running at about $1 per email subscriber per month when we were just sending out the blast messages. In other words, everybody in my life cycle gets the same message. But once we started implementing life cycle marketing and giving targeted messages to each phase of this customer life cycle, that went up to $9 per subscriber per month. Obviously, my whole list didn't get $9 per subscriber per month, but just by improving the targeting right there, you really can drive up your customer lifetime value. So, any questions on those marketing principles before we get into the meat? We start talking about retention next. Can everybody still hear me? I'm going to assume yes. All right, great. Which email tool will allow you to segment like that? I'm going to get into segment and targeting. Like, that's the course, basically, is retention. We're going to talk about some segmentation and targeting. AOV, we're going to talk about other segmentation and targeting, and then acquisition, we'll talk about other segmentation and targeting. The tools, I don't want you to get hung up on the tools. The problem with the tools is that everybody in this group is using different things. I think you can do much of the same segmentation and targeting with MailChimp, which is a very sort of entry-level tool, as you can in Klaviyo or something more advanced. You can't do everything, and yes, it's easier to do certain things in Klaviyo versus MailChimp, but I think the more important thing is the principles. That's why I put the compass here. I took it from Stephen Covey, who talks about principles. Like, you don't want to get hung up on the individual tactics. You want to think about the principles behind the tactics. And then if you apply those principles, you can apply them, with Google Analytics in a spreadsheet, or you can apply them in really advanced, catalog or attribution software. They should still work. So the principles are much more important than the tools. Do you need to be good at copy? No. I mean, it helps. I think you can develop kick-ass emails with just images. If that's a little bit, look at what MeUndies does in their email marketing. It's largely all their Instagram images. Will you be going over how to discover the customer lifecycle for ourselves? Yes, I will. Does anything change if your site mainly gets one time? Yes, it does. So I get this question a lot. Omar asks, does anything change if your site mainly gets one-off sales? Well, first I would say, are you sure? Because if I think of, again, I talk about BMWs, washing machines. These are big businesses, and I know they have a customer life cycle. It's just that they extend out over years instead of something that you can measure within a year. But if you are truly, I was talking with a buddy who runs a wiper business, and yes, his customers come back to buy windshield wipers on the car, but the longer the customer life cycle, if you do run a durable hard good business like you sell washing machines, it's all the more imperative to get your first order profitable and maximize the AOV, as opposed to expecting to make it up on repeat purchases. So it just changes the equation a little bit. We have a limited number of products for a given client, and so it's between 1 to 3 products per client. How does that change things? I guess you're asking about how to cross-sell or upsell 1 to 3 products per client, and I'm going to get to that. Yeah, I'm going to get to that when we talk about cross-sells and upsells. How much is about the automation emails? I'm going to get it. In the next lesson, we're going to get into email marketing. Should explain that. Someone just put a link. Stephanie has a question about the sheet. Why don't we go back to that at the end? People are asking some very specific questions here. So let me just go through this last module on retention. I think it will answer some of your questions. As a time check, I've got about 7 minutes to the hour. So we've got roughly another 35 minutes. Checking from my Patriots mug. I am from Boston originally. All right. I want to turn off everybody on the call. I apologize if I did. So let's talk about retention a little bit. So we've got 2 lessons on retention, today and Thursday. E-commerce is tough, right? Guilt. Guilt was fire sailed, right? One King's Lane, fire sale. I mean, I think they raised hundreds of millions of dollars and they sold for like 10. So that was a loss, right? Fab. It's tough. I'm not the only guy who says it's tough. There are 2 articles you should read. I can put it in the show notes for this week. But number 1 is on the left. Andy Dunn, CEO of Bonobos, has an article called "E-commerce is a Bear," and on the right, Josh Hanna, who's a partner at Matrix, has one called. It's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek title there. That's a nice little $40 million e-commerce company you have there. Call me when it scales. Both these guys are getting at is that there are 2 problems with an e-commerce business. And the first is that customer acquisition is hard and often unprofitable. And the number 2 is that customer reacquisition to get a second order is often hard and unprofitable compared to, say, a SaaS business, a software business where the customer is locked in. So let's go over those 2 problems. And you're going to see why retention is such a key lever for you, probably the most important lever for you to generate cash off your business. This is a breakdown of a typical e-commerce first order. Revenue, say our AOV is $100. So we get $100 in revenue. Cost of goods on that is $50. And then the customer acquisition cost is $60. So we net a profit of minus $10. We did not make a profit on the first order. So, raise your hand if this looks like your business. I think it's pretty common in e-commerce that the first order is rarely profitable, and that too many e-commerce businesses have a one and done customer segment. Probably 80% of your customers right now are one and dones. So they come in, they buy, and you never hear from them again. And one of the hardest parts in e-commerce is turning that one-time buyer into a multi-buyer. So customer churn, or lack of retention, is expensive, time-consuming, and taxing. And I think about it, if 80% of my buyers are one and done, they are often not only just one and done, they often have really small average order sizes. They are often the customers that take up your customer support time. They are often the customers who return product. And if they are 80%, it's like the wide swath of your business, then 20% are the ones that typically drive your business. And a fun thing to do, you might want to do, is to find your own one-time buyer percentage. Let's do that, or let me at least show you the spreadsheet now. If I click on this. Has anyone ever used DeckSet for presentations? I think it's a killer app. So boom, we go into our spreadsheet. What we're going to is find what percentage of our business represents one-time buyers. So that is this increase F. Again, F is what we talk about, means frequency. Frequency is the number of times people buy, so retention. And this is sort of a database marketing term, but like in F1 is a customer that only bought from us once. In F2 is a two-time buyer, right? Like in F1 plus or whatever. So you know what F means, it means like frequency. So here in the notes I've got, if you load up this segment and you click on this link in the chat window, it should open up for you a one-time buyer segment in your Google Analytics. And it should, sorry, I think I just closed the window I wanted to show you. But boom, let's go back into this vitamin company here. So we've been looking, we had this segment loaded up earlier here. Everybody who made a purchase. Well, let us compare, let's remove all of our users. We're going to add a segment of one-time buyers. And this is the one that I just gave you the link to. So the way you add that, or I could do a quick tutorial on how to create these segments. You go into Google Analytics, you say you want to create a segment. It gives you this window. And in these segments, in this window, you can create a demographic segment, which we know we don't like, right? You can ignore that. Behavior, we like this one. This is one way to do it. Number of transactions per user. We'd say like, if it's equal to 1, then we've got a one-time buyer, right? Or if it's greater than and equal to 1, we've got a multi-buyer. What did I use here? Yeah, filter includes transactions per user is equal to 1. And that is, I'm calling that my one-time buyer segment, right? So, did I save it? I don't think I saved it. All right, let's do this again. We'll remove this. We're going to add a segment. We're going to add my one-time buyer segment, and we're going to go down here and click apply. So now what we're seeing is a graph of how many people made a purchase, so 1,252, and how many of those 1,200 are one-time buyers. You enter those numbers in here. Here's your 1,252, and here's your 1,000. It gives you 80%, right? So for 9 retailers out of 10, I see this kind of disparity. Well, I got 1,200 people made a purchase, and 1,000 of them are one-time buyers. Now, the first asterisk on this is, again, we're only looking at 1 quarter's worth of data. So this percentage is going to go down over time, this 80%, because if you look back over a year or 2 years, more people are likely to come back and buy again, right? So unfortunately, though, in Google Analytics, you can't apply this segmentation data to more than 90 days, right? So Ahmed is tagging Omar. We got 2 people from the same team here. Don't get discouraged, right? Like, okay, people are posting theirs in chat, 91%, 82%. So number one, we're only looking at 90 days worth of data, okay? So that will go down. And number 2, this is typical in e-commerce, right? Think of a power distribution is what we have in our customers. You have a very thin slice, think of the 80-20 rule, right? You have a very thin slice of customers that are driving any business. And that's, if I did this for Amazon, I'd probably see the same distribution. So it's not like you're an outlier. But if you were like any other e-commerce business, you make your business off the repeats. So repeat business is the key to going from feast or famine to stable, predictable revenue. Think about SaaS. I talk about SaaS a lot, which is software as a service, or a subscription e-commerce business. So in both those businesses, the users are locked in every month. They have to pay every month for product or for the software. And this means two things. Number one, it means you sleep better as the entrepreneur, right? As the business owner, because at the end of the month, you can predict how many people are going to come back and buy next month. And then number two, you can sell your business. And I've helped and sell a couple different e-commerce businesses. And what helps the multiple, the exit multiple, well, let me take a step back. When you go to sell your business, the buyer will typically slap what's called a multiple on your business. And that means they will take your cash flow. So say I'm making $100,000 free cash flow every year off my business. They will put a multiple on that. They will say, okay, the multiple is 3. I'm going to give you $300,000 to buy your business. So that's called a multiple of cash flow. Or you can sell off a multiple of revenue or a multiple of EBITDA. Well, what makes the multiple go up? The multiple goes up if you have more repeat customers, and among many other things. But as an example, a ballpark example, right now for e-commerce businesses doing under 5 million in revenue, I typically see like a 3 times cash flow multiple. That means whatever you made in your business last year, you multiply that by 3, and that's the valuation of your business. Versus a SaaS company where, SaaS is so hot right now. The multiples I've seen like 11 times past cash flow. And what that just means is an investor would be willing to give you 11 times that cash flow. So your business would be worth a lot more. And why is the SaaS business worth so much more than the e-commerce business if, say, they have the same amount of cash flow? It's because the SaaS business has repeat customers, right? Like the lifetime values are higher, the predictability is much higher, there's less risk for the investor, so the multiple goes up. That's why it would behoove you to get second orders on your business. So I talked about two problems that these two authors talk about. Number one is that you have too many one and dones and that they are usually unprofitable. The second problem is that we have to reacquire the multis in e-commerce. So in order to get a second order isn't free for us, right? Like we pay for AdWords, we pay for Facebook ads to acquire that first customer. And then then they click on the same damn ads the next time to come back and buy, right? So this is often, this is sort of the guilt model here. We're the first order from a customer, we lose $10. And the second order from the customer, again, we lose $10, right? So this model, as you would expect, doesn't work because the cost of acquisition is often high, not only on the first order, but the second order. So to succeed, to generate cash, we need two things. We need multi-buyers and we need cheap reacquisition. We need to have them coming back and buying cheaper such that that second order becomes profitable. So this is what you want. The first order, we might lose money, but we make it up on the second order. The second order, the cost of acquisition dropped from $60 to 0, right? How do we do that? That's the question. If you do that, this is a graphical depiction. When you first acquire the customer, you're in the red. You've spent money in your Facebook ads and your content marketing and whatever to get that customer in the door to buy. You're in the hole, right? And it's not until you generate more income off that customer that you hope that the right side of this equation is bigger than the left-hand side of the equation. So that's the goal. There are two uses of cash, by the way. If you do this, you're generating cash in your business. That's the goal. There are two uses of that cash. The first is to either line your pockets, like you can take it out. You can be the lifestyle entrepreneur who runs a business and takes money out of it every year. Or you can take that money and put it back into acquisition to grow your business. But either way, cash is king for I would guess, everybody on this call. We don't have venture money in the bank. The goal is to generate that cash, whether we use it to pay ourselves or to grow further. In the next session, I want to talk about how you get that cheap reacquisition that drives cash flow. The hint is there are a couple marketing channels and campaigns that are super cheap to deploy. And I think that'll be the best way for us to get that acquisition. So with that, it is now about 10 minutes after. We've got about 20 minutes for questions. I would remind you here that if you want me to check out your analytics and use you in some of these tutorials, add clients at empiregrowthgroup.com to your Google Analytics or to your email service provider, Klaviyo, MailChimp, whatever. Add me. I'll see that come through. And in adding me, you're giving me permission to refer to you in these talks. But let me load up the chat window now and stop my share. Hey everybody. What do you have? What questions do you have on that material? So we went over 4 things. We talked about the private equity approach, kind of like the 3 levers that get your return in 100 days. We talked about the course approach and sort of this growth framework, the growth process framework, and I gave you the marketing backlog that I want you to keep in your hip pocket. For the next couple of weeks, we talked about marketing principles, largely based on behavior. We talked about the customer lifecycle, and then we talked a little bit about retention and why it's so important. So what questions do you have? Do you typically focus, okay, Joe asks, do you typically focus on that 90-day one-time buyer percentage, or do you focus on it another time period? So, well, Joe, the idea, again, 90 days is the limitation due to Google Analytics. The good thing about GA is that it's so easy. You can load up that percentage and I can check it every day. So it's always part of what I look at. But I think for an ideal business, what I want to do is look beyond that at the actual one-time buyer percentage. And the way you get that is by transactional data analysis. So you got to export all the transactions out of your shopping cart. We'll do that next week, and load it up in Excel, and you can find out what your one-time buyers are. So, so I look beyond 90 days. And again, that's really business specific. So, like I said, content businesses often have a really short life cycle, and maybe it's 90 days is fine. In apparel, I like to look 6 months to a year. If I'm selling durable hard goods like cars, it's going to be multi-year. I have no idea how to pronounce your name. Tzipora. Zipporah, I'm guessing. Zipporah, yes, I did. I nailed it. Do you have a plan for a startup, as we need to focus on the first stage of the life cycle? Well, that's exactly, if you're a startup, the maximizing retention and AOV are sort of nice to haves, but your first priority is finding product market fit. There's a great book called Traction, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. And Traction gives you, I think the authors give you like 15 or 16 different growth channels that you can explore. Content marketing, Facebook ads, whatever. And your goal as a startup is just to cycle through all those things and find out where you can drive traffic cost effectively. So yeah, retention and AOV are important, but you should be a little bit more focused on just figuring out where you can drive customers. In the marketing backlog, how do you determine the impact score? That's expected impact. That's really that's what you expect. Do you expect this really to pay off or not? It's you're not always going to be right in assessing the elements in your backlog, but you just make your best guess. How can we better track data when we use multiple sales channels? We launched on Kickstarter, sell our e-commerce on our e-commerce store, but also use Amazon. I just show Kickstarter campaigns for new products on Amazon as channels to sell our products. Yeah, whenever I have a consulting client, this is like the first 2 months easily, is kind of sorting this stuff out. And the cheap way is you just make the best use of Google UTMs as you can from all those different acquisition channels. So UTMs are these UTM, medium, source, whatever. They're if you Google UTMs, they're little parameters you put in a link to your site, and it tells Google Analytics the source of your traffic. That's probably like for 90% of you, just working the Google UTMs will be the best thing you can do. If you want to get a little more advanced, Wicked Reports and Attribution app are two great apps to help you with marketing attribution across all those channels you mentioned. But the king of all of them is transactional data analysis. So every time you have a transaction, you want to stamp the attribution information to that transaction. Shopify, Magento don't do this out of the box. Usually you have to get a plugin or something to do it. But what that means is you come up with whatever attribution model you have. Maybe it's last touch, so the last campaign to acquire this customer. Maybe it's first touch. Maybe it's some combination. Last touch is easy, but say it's email. The transaction goes through, and I'm stamping that order with the word email, and then I export all the transactions out of my database, and I analyze it later on. But I don't want to make this too complicated. And I sound like I'm getting too complicated right now, and I think for most people on the call, trying to get Google Analytics to do the trick is the way to go. I don't want you to get stressed about it. Attribution app has a Shopify plugin. Wicked Reports is another. And then what I said is like the Mac Daddy, and that is logging your attribution information in your orders table and then just exporting it and like doing pivot tables in Excel. And I lost everybody on the call with that comment. But yeah, check out Attribution app and Wicked Reports. Can Amazon help this at all? Do you have a name of a Shopify app? Are you way up? Whoa. You assigned an impact of medium of product. Oh, you assigned an impact of my own personal impact of medium on product review emails. It's a random. All those were random. I pulled them out of where the sun doesn't shine, and I put them up there for display purposes only. I think every business is different, and you just make your best guess at how impactful these things will be. I will say in this course, I'm going to try to give you like the techniques that hit two things. Number one, that they're underused, and number two, they have really high return. So I'm going to give you my personal choices for the best things you can implement. And I'm also going to give you campaigns. So when I talk about an email welcome series or a retention series, I'm going to say like, here's what worked at Karmaloop. Here are the emails that you can now doctor up yourself and upload to MailChimp, right? So I want to make it really easy for you. What behavioral segments do you use frequently? Well, that gets to kind of the customer life cycle. So they could be as simple as these are new. Let's put them at high R F0. So what I just said there is that these are super recent, never purchased, something like that. These are my new email subscribers, right? High R F0. So I'm going to treat them very differently. I'm going to try to get them to opt in to an email welcome series, and that's how I'm going to nurture them. Maybe high R, high F means people who are on the site a lot and who have bought a lot from me. So maybe these are my MVPs, and I'm going to have a specific a specific email sequence that targets them. But throughout this whole course, I'm gonna give you some my favorite behavioral segments. We've spent money on Facebook ads with great results, getting great traffic, but conversion's really low. Will you offer us ways to get that conversion up? Yes. I've got a whole week on conversion rate optimization, and it's I've got a class on my own site called the Conversion Playbook, and I'm going to distill it down to that week. And it's all about how to get better conversion rates off of traffic. A friend bought Conversion Playbook. Will the campaigns be the same you use there? For the 2 weeks, so this is the class I have on my site, and I'm going to try to. 2 weeks of this is going to be devoted to conversion rate optimization, and I'm going to pull from some of that class material. Yeah. Wicked Reports doesn't exist, it seems. Let's see. This is Wicked Reports, yeah. Wicked Reports is a good solution. It's not for everybody. They're a little bit more focused, I think, on information products. Attribution app has the Shopify plugin. But 9 times out of 10, I think it's Ramit Sethi says, don't try to be 40 before you're 40. Like, walk before you run. And like, if we can get Google Analytics to work for you, that should do the trick for 80% of the retailers out there before you want to do some more advanced attribution modeling. What are the questions? Blake says he loves pivot tables. I'm going to try not to get into pivot tables on here because I want this to be interesting, but we'll see. If you already asked your question, ask it again because I've probably scrolled way by it. What percentage of one-time buyers should you have? It depends on the business. If I run, for example, a Dollar Shave company, it's all subscription. I don't want any one-time buyers, or I want a very small percentage, because my whole goal is to get people to buy my subscription product. But I would say, if I'm going to generalize, say you sell face paint and clown supplies. Well, that niche I know very well. I'm joking, but I would guess then it sounds like standard retailer, and you want the 80-20 in effect, right? Like, you're probably going to see 80% of your buyers are one-time buyers. Say you sell face paint and clown supplies. I think there's probably some seasonality in that business too. So what I would watch for on a customer life cycle is make sure you don't cut off the seasonality. If you're, I sold a lot, we did probably half of our revenue in Q4. So we didn't want a 6-month customer lifetime. We wanted to look back to at least include one holiday in there every time we did our analysis at Design Public, which is my business. John says, we might get into this later, but we have massive differences between what Facebook says our ads generate in revenue and what analytics says. I mean, I think Facebook got called out on that recently, and they admitted to overestimating. I am not familiar with your account, but one thing I see is people often have view-through conversions clicked in Facebook. And what that means is Facebook takes credit. If somebody sees your ad and then buys from your site later on, they're taking credit for that, even though the person didn't click through. Whereas Google Analytics is more last touch attribution. So if somebody sees your ad, clicks through, signs up for your email list, clicks through on your email, and then buys, Google Analytics is going to say that the last touch there was email, whereas Facebook is going to take credit for it. So Facebook, should say more than Google Analytics. What's important to you as a marketer is that you have one source you budget off of. Yeah, Google Analytics is inconsistent with our internal systems. We've struggled to get this sorted. This is Tasmin. That is, I would say, almost every client I've ever worked with. And it's Google Analytics will be inconsistent with Facebook for the reason I just described, that if Facebook has people clicking through and buying, they're going to take credit. But if there's an intermediary step, say somebody clicks Facebook and comes through to your site, then goes back to Google, Google searches, clicks through Google Shopping and comes to your site, Google Analytics is going to say that's a Google Shopping transaction, whereas Facebook is going to say it's a Facebook transaction. So it's important for you to know what kind of attribution model you want to use and just run with it. I think that's why Google Analytics would not match some of those other platforms. But and then there's, if you compare your shopping cart data with GA, that's often off. A lot of times it could be because of something simple like the placement of your code on the site. It could also be because your shopping cart takes into account returns and things, phone orders that won't be in GA. So, the upside of using GA is that it's there and it's quick and easy. You can make most marketing decisions off of it, but if you want to get advanced, I think the best thing you could do is log the transactional data in your orders table and download it and play with it in Excel. How does pricing fit into the picture? We have lots of customer feedback saying they aren't buying based on price, so there's tension between wanting to maintain AOV and wanting to drive additional revenue. How do you know where the right price is or figure this out? Micah, we're going to talk about that next week when we talk about AOV. Raising prices is one of the best things you can do to increase your AOV. Most retailers, I find, underestimate the inelasticity of demand, meaning they can increase their price and customers will pay it. And again, if you're selling a commodity product, it's harder to do. But if you're selling a proprietary product, it's usually a big opportunity. Can you use Amazon to advance your websites and not get caught? Not sure about that. Do you suggest raising prices after them being fixed for 2 years? Let's talk about that when we talk about AOV. I would need more context on your business. We have extremely seasonal business, and time between purchases extends 8 months. Mike, I think there you want to find say you run a Halloween costume retailer where the purchases happen, once a year, basically. You can still do a lot of that life cycle marketing. It's just a lot of it is going to get the customer prepared to make that purchase as holiday approaches to be top of mind. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit about win-back campaigns and retention campaigns on the next class, and hopefully that will answer your question. Victor says his question is, how can we determine our growth potential with the data we have? Yeah, growth potential is tough. I always take those with a grain of salt because it's like he's asking, okay, I've got a $5 billion industry. How big does that mean my business can be? I've always been more of a bottom up than a top down person. Like the guys at the funds who run the funds, they identify the biggest industries out there and go to acquire companies in those industries. But with a bottom up background, with a bottom up approach, probably because I'm more of an operator, I'm just thinking okay, if you've sold 9,000, how do we double that? How do we triple that? It seemed to me like if we're in print, like a religious theme, like the market would be big. Wouldn't be with that product. Maybe it would be rolling out new products into your market. No, go ahead, Todd. Share that data. So I'd be curious, and maybe you want to start a Facebook thread on this, but how do you like the level of instruction? Was it too basic, or did it go over your head? How was the pacing? Did I go too fast or too slow? A bit basic, just right. Where can I find the Facebook group? Okay, it's, this was a little bit of an overview class. I'm not getting into the nuts and bolts. Even that's going to be challenging because everybody's on a different e-commerce platform. So I'm kind of envious of the guy who taught the class on Google Tag Manager. He could just go in there and show you one thing, but we've got people in Shopify and WooCommerce and Magento and every email software under the books, and it's just going to be a little hard to do tutorials. But I think that's why I keep going back to these principles. Lost you a couple times with the Excel sheets. Okay. So most people, except for one guy, thought it was too slow. Junaid, I'm going to ramp this up just for you. Ahmed asked about a poll. I did start 2 polls in there. I think if you start two polls in Facebook, I can only pin one to the top, but there's one in there for what email software you use and another one for what shopping cart you use. And what I'm seeing is that the top 2 are Magento and Shopify, and then MailChimp. Yeah, I think next week is going to, there are things I could riff on too, like how to increase your exit valuation if you want to sell, like how to sell the business someday. I think that's usually a popular topic that's not really in the curriculum, but I certainly could touch on how I set up my team. So like team management, that's kind of what I was getting at with the backlog. Just sort of, it's really important to have that process going. Great. So I think we're right at about 1:30. And Adam asks, yeah, I've used Sweet Tooth, and Adam's asking about a loyalty program like Sweet Tooth. I am going to talk about loyalty programs. But this isn't, I don't want the class to be like, hey, this is a cool app, and this is a cool app, and this is a cool app. Now I'm done. It's sort of, that loyalty programs are tough. They're tough to get to work. I think people think they're going to be a silver bullet. Like, I just get this thing and people are, going to buy from me forever. So, Sweet Tooth can help, but if you don't want to shell out for that, you can always use email to do a lot of this stuff. Yeah, Ahmed's right. I think that's what I hear more than anything else, is that they're hard to implement and get the results you want. And the database marketing reason for that is sometimes you end up pulling back more bad customers. So what if you have a loyalty program and you just bring in more and more one-time buyers who return, and that didn't work. And that happens more than you might think. If you have data you need from us, can you ask ahead of time with video? Yes. And the problem was people were signing up literally until this morning. So I couldn't preload the content to you guys. Yeah, Tasmin, this is sort of the philosophy I want to use. Structure for me is what's important, not getting distracted by gimmicks. Yeah, the fundamentals. So like those 3 multipliers personally got me out of obsessing about the tactics. And one of the worst is conversion rate optimization, because people hear about the 99 things they need to do for conversion rate optimization. But those things stress me out. I'd rather focus on just these 3 multipliers. Great. Put any more comments in the Facebook group, and I will try to get to them this week or incorporate them into next lessons. And I will see you Thursday. I think we're on every Thursday and Monday, except for 1 week where I'm going to be in San Diego, and I moved the Monday to a Wednesday. All right. Talk to you soon.